Allergic rhinitis per se causes significant morbidity in relating to loss of work as well as school days and decreased productivity, and the most important thing is the cost of continued medication the patient requires. It has a significant effect on the quality of the sleep also. So in the next few minutes we will be just focusing on the comorbidities of allergic rhinitis and the problems that the patient has and the management, in particular the surgical issues. So I will not be going into the details of the pathophysiology of allergic rhinitis and other issues. The most important thing that here a word about the children. We do come across in our outpatient departments many of the times that the child has a snoring and also have a lateral neck mass, that is like a enlarged lymph node, almost mimicking tubercular lymphadenitis. There are some times we even got FNAC done for these children in the previous days when we were not aware of these studies and other things. So the patient will have not only adenoid hypertrophy, sometimes the child might be even having a tonsillar hypertrophy which might be due to allergic rhinitis also. So we need to keep this point in mind, and as the children first go to the pediatrician, they are the ones that they need to consider allergic rhinitis as a part of the snoring child. And these are the comorbidities, like the most important thing is the adenoid issue, and then the nasal polyps and sinusitis and inferior turbinate, and sinusitis like allergic fungal sinusitis, multiple polyps. These are the things that will be complicating the issues. So these are the things. If the patient has established obstruction already, the nasal allergy would make it more worse, or if the patient has a primary snoring, he may go into OSA. This is the 2 points that we need to understand with the allergic rhinitis. So now, why do the nose block would cause a lot of problem to the patient is that the decreased stimulation of nasal receptors that is critical in control of breathing during sleep, both through central as well as maintenance of pharyngeal tone. This is the most important thing that we need to understand. So there will be a increased negative inspiratory pressure in the pharynx, wherein the Bernoulli phenomena, then the patient will have snoring, and oral breathing would lead to posterior displacement of mandible. And if the patient has allergic rhinitis for a very long time, then they would develop some facial features like hypoplasia of the maxilla, inferior displacement of mandible, and cross bite and elongated face. So nasal allergy per se might cause a primary snoring, or it may worsen the pre-existing simple snoring and OSA. There is significant contribution of nasal obstruction in OSA, pediatric as well as adult population. So we need to understand that there are two types of obstruction that we see in one is the dynamic one, second one is the static one. So this dynamic one is the most important thing that we need to clinically examine before we put in endoscope to evaluate the patient. What is the problem in the nose? The most important thing would be to clinically assess the patient has whether alar collapse or external valve issues or something like that. So even if you do a very good beautiful septoplasty and you remove the turbinate, still the patient has the issue with the nose block. So we need to concentrate on this particular problem, that we have to examine the patient clinically is the most important thing. And the static obstruction would be a septal deviation, polyps and inferior turbinate and adenoids. A long standing static obstruction would lead to alar collapse. And in the assessment, most important thing will be history and rule out the alar collapse and nasal valve issues. And nasal endoscopy and other issues are routine. And some people, as the earlier speaker has nicely shown, there are a lot of advertisements in the internet today. There are a lot of advertisements to use this easy breathe and all these things, but I think they may not be very easy to use on a long-term basis, and they tend to discontinue these things. And then I think valve problems are better managed by septoplasty and spreader grafts and valvoplasties. This is the most important thing that I was talking about, that we need to rule out this problem. Suppose if the patient comes with a nose block, he has a mild deviation, so you do a beautiful septoplasty and turbinectomy, the still patient will have nose block because of this issue. We need to rule out this particular problem in any nasal obstruction who is having a OSA. So then allergic rhinitis is addressed many of the times on long-term basis with antihistamines and steroid nasal sprays, and when we are unable to manage the nose obstruction with this medication, then we need to address them with some of the surgical procedures that are mentioned here. So this is the routine medical management, and nasal surgery can be done as an isolated procedure, that alone we can do, or we can do as a multi-level surgery. So if you do nasal surgery alone, then it improves, as the previous speakers have nicely rated a lot of studies, that it improves the sleep quality, and I am the living example for that. I had primary snoring, and I underwent septoplasty and turbinoplasty by my friend Srinivas Kishore recently, maybe 2 years back. I am the living example. I am having very good quality of sleep, that my mouth breathing is gone in this one, but the only problem is my snoring sound has increased. I don't know. Yesterday my friend had arrived in the morning, and he was telling, earlier your sound was less, now it is more. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, probably. Then I discussed the same issue with Dr. Deen Dayal last month when I met him. He was also telling, in fact, the sound of snoring would increase to what tune we don't know, but I think the sleep quality will improve. I think the sound level will increase. So, and the nasal surgery improves the compliance of CPAP usage and all these issues. So then, there are variety of myriad of techniques that we need there are to address the inferior turbinate with microdebrider. I practice many of the times microdebrider because it has 50 to 60%, it reduces the volume instantaneously. And there are people who use coblation and radio frequency and submucosal diathermy. Actually, I asked my friend to do turbinoplasty for me, but somehow he was, he did coblation to me, and I suffered for 1 month total nose blockage because of the edema that I had. I can never forget those days, the horrible days for 1 month. I suggested Srinivas Kishore not to use coblation for inferior turbinates anymore. I think because I have experienced this very well. So this is the turbinectomy, the small video clipping. So the most important issue in addressing the nose in especially obese patients is that they have significant perioperative problems like anesthesia problems, and sometimes the bleeding will be there. So turbinectomy as such is a very good procedure, but when you pack the nose to control the bleeding, the patient will have a lot of problem in the post-operative period. I have been doing debrider assisted turbinoplasty. This way just remove the inferior and medial part, lateral part, and then remove the bone, the extra bone, and roll back the turbinate. This would give very good results in terms of improved nasal breathing, and it there is no actually post-operative pain or crusting, and bleeding is almost I promise you it's very less in post-operative period. You don't even pack the nose after turbinoplasty. We are having very good results. The problem issue is only when the patient has lot of erectile tissue with less bone. Then there will be see this, you can see this video, this patient has a very thick bone. So these kind of patients do very well with debrider assisted turbinoplasty. But when they have more erectile tissue, then I think the problem, there may be little bleeding may be there. And then we need to address the adenoidectomy. Earlier days I used to practice in pediatric as well as adult with a microdebrider assisted adenoidectomy, which was having very good results, but only issue was one or two patients had little bleeding in this one. Then I stopped doing that, and then anyway, not because of the bleeding, because today we have a better instrument maybe than that, like coblation assisted adenoidectomy. But only thing is it takes more time. It kills your time, the adenoidectomy with the coblation. It takes maybe 45 minutes in my hands. Maybe in experts like, they may take less time. So this is the adenoidectomy with this one, and this is the coblation assisted adenoidectomy in a child. So many of the times in children, if they have a borderline adenoid like grade 2 or something like that, if they are very reluctant to undergo the parents, this is very difficult to counsel in our scenario to convince a child for a snoring and this one. So in those issues, if you give steroid nasal spray, we have very good wonderful results. Only thing is they stop using on a long term basis. That's the only issue. Otherwise coblation adenoidectomy would be a better option. So I conclude by saying that nasal allergy has a significant contribution in OSA, and clinical examination has to be done to rule out the nasal valve problems and LR collapse, which is the most important thing. There are a variety of surgical procedures available today to manage them, and in selected cases of simple snoring, medical management would give rise to very good results. Nasal surgery alone, again and again, the whole issue in this session is nasal surgery alone improves the quality of sleep, reduce the arousals and reduce the daytime sleepiness and increase CPAP usages, and it can reduce the settings. So success rate of nasal surgery alone in reducing apnea seems to be very less. And last but not the least, the most important thing is we need to understand the pathophysiology of the sound that is being generated. Neither the site of obstruction during apnea nor the site of generation of snoring is not the nose. I thank you for your kind attention.